Okay, this is Kevin Franklin. I am going to do a little bit of a hangout here to talk you through processing LRGB imaging of Saturn. So let us start with some stacking. Now it's raining, so there's no fresh imaging. I'll select some pictures that I took some weeks ago, and here are the AVI frames. AVI videos. Now they've all been acquired in fire capture and using a WinJupos file naming convention with the date, the time in UTC, and the channel that's recorded there. So there's a green, there's a blue, there's some luminance, and a red channel. So we'll start with the luminance channel. So I've opened up Auto Stack It, which is, as far as I'm aware, the most commonly used image stacking program for planetary imaging. And it's free and it's very reliable. A lot of good support from the developer, even in the beta and the alpha versions. This is a brand new alpha version I'm using with a few new tools that are a bit experimental. So we've opened up the recording there. So we've got two windows. We've got the processing window and we have the image window there. So we'll start by checking through some of the options here for those who aren't familiar with the software. Image stabilization will depend on whether we're looking at a small object or a large object. So we use surface for solar and lunar recordings. If you have large areas of image to process. Planet, where there's just a single object in the center of the screen. You can see a little white dot there. So it's found at the center of Saturn. It does a little different thing when you're doing lunar imaging. So we pick a planet, dynamic background, normally keep that checked. It's recommended. I don't know exactly what it does, but let's not muck around too much. Quality estimator. So for larger planets, where Jupiter and Saturn, we leave it on gradient. For smaller planets, and particularly when we're looking at planets that have uh, parts of its edge in shadow, so Venus in crescent phase or gibbous phases of Mars, say, you can tell the program to ignore those areas so that it keeps it centered, and that comes in handy later when you're processing the imaging to get things lined up. So we've got a fairly large target there, so we'll leave that as gradient. Whether or not the alignment frames use the whole frame or just each local alignment point as a reference, but we'll leave that as local. And we analyze. Now, I've got 10,000 frames in that video, just over 3 minutes. So it will take a little bit of time to analyze all of those, and it will then order them in the image screen in order of quality. So there we go. So a nice crisp image of Saturn there. That's the first of 10,000 frames, and it gives us an assessment of the quality of those frames across time. And so you can see there, there's a little bit of a drop off at the end there. There's a few sections of the video where perhaps the seeing wasn't so good. There, I think there was a little bit of cloud cover that night, so a few sections there with the image quality wasn't as good, but nice consistent recording there, and a lot of that's going to be useful. So what we'll do is we'll check, let's say 50%. Now you can check as many of these as you want. You can check 20% in there and 40% there. But for the purposes of this demonstration, we'll just use 50%. We normalize the brightness. We won't do that. We'll do a sharpened one because I'll show you what happens when you tick that box in a minute when we get around to the sharpening stages. They're saved in folders, so they're easier to find. And so then we come over to the image window and we talk about the placement of alignment points. So you can do those manually and you can do those automatically. If you do them automatically, you can set the size and the minimum brightness of the alignment points. You place them in a grid by clicking on that button, and there you see it's placed a number of alignment points there. He's put a new feature in, and if we click the Saturn checkbox there and do that again, what you're going to see is that the alignment points are placed closer to the edge of the planet, which particularly with Saturn is a helpful thing to make sure the rings are all accounted for by alignment points, and it's not such a problem with Saturn having alignment points close to the edge as it was with other planets. You should generally avoid putting alignment points too close to the edge. But he still recommends not doing it automatically, but doing it manually and putting in large alignment points and few of them. So just try to strategically place the alignment points around the object of interest. So making sure the rings are well catered for there, and again across. You don't need many alignment points. They don't need to be terribly close together, quite large alignment points. So here we got 20 alignment points there, and let's stack that. So you can use a bit of drizzle, you can get a magnified view at the end if you like, but let's just leave that off for the time being and stack. Now 10,000 frames is going to take a couple of minutes. Well, maybe not a couple of minutes, hopefully not that long. I could bring up one that I prepared earlier, but in the interests of showing you how this all works, we'll leave it in real time and see what I can fill up in the meantime. So what the program is doing automatically there is taking that reference image. It is then aligning all the image points in each of the 10,000 frames. Well, actually the 5,000 frames, should I say. Then stacking them together, making sure that all the alignment points are lined up, and bringing together and forming one image, which is a stack of the 5,000 with hopefully all the geometry fixed. So it's going to take a little while, but that's fine. So what else can I tell you about AutoStackit? It is, as I say, a free program. It's, I think, quite a bit better for this type of planetary work than Registax, which is another program that a lot of us start off using when we're first doing planetary imaging. It's a bit easier to use, I think, Registax, but the alignment and the sharpening and basically just about everything else it does is, once you get used to using it, much better in AutoStackit. So here we go, we've got our image. Now where we're going to find that is, it's going to be where the image, the original AVI, was stored, and it will be in a folder marked AP50. So what I like to do now, as we get to the sharpening, and I still like to use Registax for this, using the wavelet function. So if I come out of that, go find the 50, and if I can find the image that I just made, there it is. So this is the image I just made. So that's not bad. Let's zoom it up to see how it looks. So you can see it's a little bit frosty around the edges there, and that's where the wavelets come in. So I've got a couple of presets here that I go straight to, and if we apply what I call the Saturn set of wavelets, we get a much crisper image. there's a little bit of artifact there. You can see the Cassini, the Cassini division, obviously the large gap in the rings there, but you can also see the ink division. Now that's that thin line coming around there. This line here, that's a processing artifact. I think that's a shadow of the Cassini division, which you can see again on the other side of the rings, and the ink gap, which is a little less clear, but obviously a more real feature in this processing. Now, you might recall that I did use a sharpened uh, option in auto stack it, and the result of that sharpened option is this one, which is marked with CONV on the end of the file name. It's performed some basic deconvolution, which you don't have any control over, and it's not recommended to be the final sharpening procedure that you use. But to look at that there, it's actually not a bad result at all, not very much worse than what I just achieved using the wavelet function. So we'll come back to that later, because I'll use that for my color channels. So I'll come back to the original one, which I didn't save. Let's sharpen it, save it, and let's go back to auto stack it. And what I'm going to do now is take the color imaging. Now I'll take that as red. Let's not go through all that again, and it's all back in the same folder that we were just in before. So I'll just for demonstration though, I'll show you the red channel. Now these are only about 800 frames, and so much easier to or much quicker to get up. Place the APs in the grid there, do it automatically, and stack. Or you can pick them manually as I did before, but for the color it isn't really that important because of the way the LRGB process works later on. So let's then take that as read, that I've done the RG and B imaging and I've given them a sharpen up, and we then go to image composition. Now I do that in Photoshop, which we shall open up. And what I like to use here are the astronomy tool kit. Just give due credit to the author of that software. I'll just play his little copyright blurb there. So Noel Carboni put it together and cost about 15 bucks to buy online, plugs straight into Photoshop. So we'll just shut that down. No, don't want to change that. And in this, it makes it just a little bit easier to construct RGB image from channel files. So if we run that script and we choose our R, and that puts it in the red channel. We choose our G, which it puts in the green channel, and B, which we put in the blue channel. And we just accept the defaults there. And now we've got a very green looking Saturn. But that's okay, because that is easy to fix. So we go to levels. I'm assuming that everyone who is viewing this has Photoshop or some similar image program that they can use to make all these adjustments. So we'll adjust each of the channels individually, and what we're trying to do here is get the color balance right. So bump up the reds there. You can see I'm raising the black level too, to try and darken the background without losing any of the detail from the planet itself. So there's green. Now that's too green, so we soften that a bit. It is a bit yellow. That's all right. So we're going to bump the blue, and there we go. So now we've got a planet that looks a little bit more like Saturn's color that we've grown used to. And if you like, you can come in and do some saturation boosting, vibrance and saturation to get those colors pumped. So that's the RGB. Now if we increase the magnification on that, let's say fill the screen, and you can see it's a noisy image. So what I like to do here, it's a little trick, is to actually increase the image size by 100%. And then come back to the background and just do a noise reduction on it. So that softens it a little bit there, not too bad. You can preserve the details and keep the details sharp if you like. But remember, this is just the color. So in a minute, we're going to put a luminance layer on top of that, which contains all the detail. So we'll accept that. And yeah, I'm happy with that. So what we do then is we open up our luminance. Now, where is that one? That's the one there. Okay, so we've opened that up. Now, if we're going to combine that with the other one, let's not forget to increase that to 800 by 800 pixels as well. Otherwise, they're not going to look very well matched. You see the background needs some fixing up there. Just make sure first that it's in grayscale. There it is. It's saved it as RGB color. So let's make it grayscale. Let's get back to the levels there, and let's just do it simple. Select black, make the background black. There, lovely. Okay. And that's about all I like to do with that. I think we've done all the sharpening we need to do. We can fiddle around a bit and do a bit more sharpening just to see whether we can get a better result than that. So let's try a sharpen filter. Let's just go do an easy one, just a smart sharpen. You can see it has introduced, you get a little bit of sharpening of the detail there. Toggle it off, toggle it back on again. You might pick up a few extra details there. The other trick you might have heard of is to do what they call a high pass filter. And so how we achieve that is we duplicate the layer, make a background copy, and then instead of normal blending, we do overlay blending. Now that obviously gives it a lot more contrast. So what we need to do is change that background copy that we've overlaid and apply in the filters other high pass. So we high pass filter, now that's set at 1.3 pixels. We can turn that down, we can turn it up. You can see different levels, and you know we don't want to be overdoing it. We still want a nice clean image, and see what's going on around here is you're going to get some sharpening artifacts. You see the planets start bleeding into the rings, and that's going to make it look a little bit ugly. So we just cancel that, forget about that, I'll delete that. So we just leave that luminance layer just as it is. Now make sure, you might have seen before, merged all the visible layers there. That's just so that you make sure you take all of your changes when you take this next step, which is to select it all, copy it, and just paste it on top of what we've got there. But remember to paste it on top of all the adjustments you've made. So now we've got layer 1 is obscuring everything below it because it's set at 100%. And what we need to do there is change the blending from normal to luminosity. So what that does is it then all of the detail, all of the fine lines in the atmosphere, the detail in the rings, is now coming from the luminance layer, the top layer 1, and all of the color information is being applied to each of those pixels from the background layer. So that is essentially why the sharpening and the detail in the background layer isn't as important. So now we've got a nice looking Jupiter there with a bit of detail. Now's the time to crop it down to get rid of those ugly stacking artifacts. Let's say keep things nice and neat. We'll say make that a 600 by 600 pixel image. Trying to keep it centered if you can, without getting too pedantic about it. Okay, and apply that crop. So now we've got a nice looking image there. No, that didn't make any difference, so we'll get rid of that. And now we start to do a few little things to bring out some contrast. Now there's two ways to do that. The one I prefer to use is to apply some gamma. So we take it to the extreme, you see what happens. Take it the other way and see what happens. Oh, you see some moons there. How about that? Anyway, so I like to take the gamma down to about 0.9, and then we can boost the brightness a little bit there. So you can see how that, if I just, perhaps I'll turn that, take that away, and we'll just toggle that on and off. On, and you can just see how, just get a little bit of separation in the colors of the bands. The other way to do that, if we turn that off, we can apply a brightness contrast layer, so we can just increase the contrast and achieve a similar result. But I think the brightness doesn't have the same impact as an increase in the exposure. So even that, yeah, well, that doesn't look too bad either. Yeah, I'd be happy with either of those. But I'll keep the one I did first, and I'll just make that visible again. And so now, if you like, you can recheck the color balance. If you think the rings are a bit blue, we can open up that layer again. Just give it a little less blue. See, that's turning it too green, so we give it that blue back, and then maybe just, no, maybe they're not too blue. Maybe that was just my imagination. But, you know, you can spend weeks adjusting color balance. Well, spend hours adjusting color balance and then have another look at it the next morning and go, oh, that's all wrong, and start again. But I think that's not such a bad outcome there. Yeah, I'm happy with that. So we just close down that one there, just for neatness on the desktop. And so there's Jupiter. So I hope there's someone out there that might have got some useful tip from all of that. I'm always around in Google Plus if you want to put a comment or a question on the YouTube video or on the link to this on Google Plus. I'd be happy to answer anything, or if you have any criticisms or suggestions, because I know there are dozens of other ways to achieve the same result. Be pleased to hear from you. Otherwise, yep, clear skies everyone. And yep, bye for now.